everyone. Welcome to Narayana IAS. And as a part of daily news analysis, we bring the 5 most important articles to you from The Hindu and Indian Express. And in continuation of the same series, today's 5 articles are: number 1, we will talk about spotlighting pre-eclampsia and how to ensure safe motherhood against such hyper-intensive disorders. In this article, we will also talk about maternal and newborn childcare. Second, we will move on to why ICC is seeking an arrest warrant against Israeli Prime Minister. In this article, we will discuss in detail International Criminal Court. Third, we will move on to European Union Copernicus emergency services and how they were used in locating the Iranian president who died in a plane crash recently. So in this article, we will discuss in detail Copernicus program and what it is. Fourth, we will move on to why does the waterfall appear so white? So this interesting mechanism we will understand through the scientific process. The last article will be a UN report which talk about the need of Indian pastoralist better access to land and thus recognition of their right. And once we are done with this, we will talk about the mains and prelims question on the same articles. So let's begin. So let's start with the first article, that is spotlighting pre-eclampsia and ensuring safe motherhood. This is important because child care and maternal care are important part of UPSC preparation, where the health is a very explicit unit that is given for anybody to study. So thus it is part of the US paper too. It is important from the perspective of both prelims as well as mains, because we will discuss some schemes over here, and in mains you have certain points to write. Now let's move on to that is previous year questions. Like from the question you can understand why UPSC does focus on maternal and even newborn care. Like look at this article question that was asked in 2021. That is, in order to enhance the prospect of social development, sound and adequate healthcare policies are needed, particularly in field of geriatrics and maternal health care. Discuss. So you can see the maternal health care was focused in here. UPSC does not ignore this explicitly, and this is a very recent question. Like in 2021 only the UPSC has asked this question. That means this is important, and UPSC will ask more question from this. Moving on to context, why are we talking about this? Because apparently May 22 is a PE day, pulmonary embolism day, which is a root cause on actually very prominent cause behind the pregnancy-related complications. So this article focuses on the pregnancy-related complications, especially the hyperintensive disorders like eclampsia that we are talking about. Now, why are we talking about this? Because there is a recent rise in congenital and neurological disorder. Congenital disorders are those disorders which a child or a person is born with. They don't develop it later. They are born with such kind of disorder. Neurologicals are related to brain. So with the rise on this, the article focuses upon that what can we do in maternal and child care by which the woman can have a healthy child and a person can have a healthy lifestyle. Moving on to, let's first talk about what is the status of current neonatal care and maternal care in India. Now, the article says that of the entire pregnancy-related complications that happen across the world, India is responsible for the 25% of the world's adverse or worse outcome. That means of the entire pregnancy-related the bad outcomes that goes in the world, 25% are given only by India. That means India need to work on that at such a greater level. Now, the second topic you can talk about, second, it will focus upon the child health. It says that according to National Family Health Survey, the prenatal mortality rate in India is 30,000 per 1,000 pregnancy. Out of 1,000 pregnancy, the 32 child dies during childbirth, and neonatal mortality even during pregnancy, not even during birth. And neonatal, that during birth or even early delivery result in 25 per 1,000 live birth. Out of 1,000 pregnancy, 25 dies by such mechanism. Now, once we've discussed with child, let's move on to the maternal health. That is the health of the mother. Now, the statistics say that the maternal mortality rate in India is 97 per lakh live birth since 2018 and 2020's data. It is that data. That means out of 1 lakh pregnancy that happens in India, 27 women die in the process of it. Now, which is a very saddening aspect, given the fact even many of our neighbors have moved ahead. You can even take the example of China. China has very good figure in this perspective. So in order to prove that we are a developed nation and we are moving towards the development, we need to definitely work on this particular indicator. Now, once you discuss this, we know the child care and especially the incidences of maternal death and the child death during pregnancy are high. And out of all the possible reasons that are there, the majority of the reasons that contribute to such kind of mortality and morbidity are basically hyperintensive disorder in pregnancy. That means the blood pressure rises, the pressure in the body rises, as a result of which the arteries in the body explode, and thus we see the blood loss and the death of either the mother or the child. Okay. Now, first of all, let's understand the reason behind the high maternal and child mortality rate in India. Number one, the first and the foremost reason behind such is the poor nutritional access. That during the childbirth or during the pregnancy, the nutritional requirement of a woman increases because now she's taking care of two being herself and a child within herself. But often it is found that during pregnancy, the adequate nutrition is not given to her. She doesn't gain the right weight that is required for a pregnant mother, which results in the low birth weight of a child, growth restriction of a child, premature delivery, and often the hyperintensive disorders like pre-eclampsia, that is HDP, which is responsible for the maternal mortality as well as morbidity. In addition to that, the entire scenario is exacerbated by, or the ground for this scenario is provided by our patriarchal social structure, which doesn't favor enough social resources allocation to a woman. That means even if she is pregnant, enough food, especially the nutritious food, is not given to us. She's the last person to eat in a home. She will have the least number of resources that will be given to her. Often the resources goes to a man, and if they come to it as a female, that is going to be when of course the resources are very less. Overall, the other social structure phenomena like early marriages and multiple marriages put women in a very vulnerable position, whereas in case of pregnancy, she is more likely to suffer from such complications. Lastly, and the most important, we state is directly responsible for such rising or for such the greater occurrences of maternal mortality is the poor access to healthcare facilities, where during pregnancy and even before and after, women need to have the better access to healthcare facilities in case of any complications. However, the antenatal care or skilled care physician is often not available to women who can deal with such complications. So overall, what is the result? The result is rising morbidity and mortality during pregnancy, and in this, 2/3 are actually contributed by severe bleeding, blood pressure, and then artery burst. So hyperintensive disorders are responsible for this. See, high blood pressure during pregnancy and complication from delivery and unsafe absorption. So you can understand why the report suggested that hyperintensive disorder are the leading cause of death in a pregnant woman or even their child. And thus we need to come up with a mechanism which is specifically deal with such kind of phenomena. Okay. Before we do that, before we come up with a solution, you need to understand that we cannot ignore maternal or neonatal mortality in India, because it is a key indicator of the status of health and status of development in a country. If the country is not able to prevent such causes of death in their own state or in a country, that means they have not developed to the level of where they can provide adequate health facilities to anyone. Because here the deaths are generally not because of any social, any other reason are prominent, but the adequate health is not given. It's very visible over there. Because these diseases are very preventable and treatable, and even if mortality rate is high, that means such preventable and treatable cures are not available in a nation. Now, case study of pre-eclampsia and hyperintensive disorder. We have so far concluded that hyperintensive disorder are the major or the leading cause of the death morbidity during pregnancy. Out of this, one particular case study that we will discuss is pre-eclampsia. Now, pre-eclampsia is also a kind of hyperintensive disorder during pregnancy, which lead to multiple organ dysfunction and a significant cause of the both maternal and neonatal morbidity and mortality, both death as well as multiple kind of diseases. And disease that happen from such kind of complications have very long-term consequences like increased heart failure, coronary diseases throughout her life, and stroke to the mother. Now, that is the eclampsia, you understand. How can we prevent it? Like we said, that these diseases are very preventable if you have enough attention and cure is given to them. How do we prevent that? Number one is, it requires enough screening and managing of high-risk pregnancies. So if you know that a woman is vulnerable, she hasn't gained enough weight, and even in normal circumstances, the screening process should be available to a woman. First screening process should be done during a first trimester, where it will help identify the early stages of pre-eclampsia if anybody is developing, or the fetal growth restriction. And you can also focus on the medical history of a woman, her demographic, and even using Doppler ultrasound, we can identify if there is an issue in any arteries or any placenta. So using placental biomarker, you can identify the evidences of eclampsia in a woman, and thus if you identify it early, you can come up with a management plan as well. The second screening process can be done at the second and third trimester surveillance, which will also a kind of continuation of the early identification and management plan. So the entire conclusion of this entire approach or this case study is that what is needed is early identification, early management technique in order to prevent such kind of preventable consequences during pregnancies. Now, next is proactive measure for a safe motherhood. Overall, we discuss one case study, but for the safe motherhood, in order to ensure the safer child delivery, making sure that both child and mother are safe, we need to come up with few steps. The first and foremost step that you should remember is that entire maternal and child care has to be seen in continuum. They should not be seen in silos. They should be integrated, where we can integrate multiple maternal and newborn health initiatives like family planning, antenatal, skill delivery, emergency, obstetric and neonatal care, and postnatal services. All of these should come together. That means we should focus on the entire cycle of pregnancy. That is, first of all, we should focus about prenatal care. That is when woman is pregnant, her nutritional requirement, her early screening, tracking, identification of diseases is required. And once you move on to during pregnancy also, professional health should be available to her, so that during pregnancy, she doesn't suffer from any consequences. And once she has given birth to a child, that is postnatal care should also be taken care of, so that no woman or child should suffer from lack of healthcare facilities or require health requirement that are needed during all the three stages of the child care or pregnancies. Overall, as I said, in every stage, a particular mechanism is needed. Number one, in a prenatal, we should focus upon early detection and management of risk, as we saw in the pre-eclampsia case. Then the antenatal care, antenatal, prenatal are the same thing. You can think about that. Largely, overall, once you've taken care of all this aspect, what is needed is promoting awareness, so that more and more women are aware of existing of such kind of disorder, and if they have any such kind of possibilities or vulnerability to such a scenario, they can approach the healthcare provider in a very early stage. Now, for the same thing, the government, especially the Indian Radiological and Imaging Association, has launched a program, that is Samarakshan program, to provide for the safe motherhood across India. Now, its objective is to reduce pre-eclampsia cases from 8 to 10% right now to 3%. From 8 to 10% to 3%, and fetal growth restriction from about 25 to 30% to around 10%. So around 8 to 10% mortality and morbidity is because of the preeclampsia, and 25 to 30% is because of the fetal growth restriction. So this radiological association, imaging association, is trying to prevent such kind of causes by providing the safer services. Now, in this entire program, the community engagement and leadership are crucial, so that the community will help in awareness in accessing the health facilities, and the leadership will make sure that the programs are properly implemented. So we can conclude that for the safe motherhood, what is needed is number one, awareness, proactive measures, and comprehensive care throughout the pregnancy, like all three stages, like I said, prenatal, and then during pregnancy and postnatal care. So all are taken care of. The awareness is enough there, proactive measures are there, and thus we will be able to ensure that every woman is experiencing a safe and a confident childbirth. From this, let's move on to the next article. Now, let's start with second article, that is why ICC has sought a prosecution or arrest warrant against the Netyanhu, who is Israeli Prime Minister. This is important from the perspective of GS paper 2 prelims as well as mains, where the International Criminal Court is an important international institution which is specifically mentioned in UPSC syllabus. Even previously, ICC has been, a question related to ICC has been asked by UPSC, like in 2018, it asked the Rule of Law Index, which is released by which of the following organization. So there are 4 options, read about them and try to find which one is responsible for release of this index. Okay, moving on to number 1, why ICC is a news? Because recently, International Criminal Court or the member parties to International Criminal Court has raised a request in ICC to arrest number 1, Israeli Prime Minister, number 2, Israeli Defense Minister, and number 3, 3 leaders of the Hamas who are actually responsible for the war crimes and crime against humanity in the October 7, 2023 incident that happened in Israel and the kind of war in Palestine that followed after this incident. Okay. Now, more in news. Both are responsible for crime. The crime of Hamas involved the extermination, murder, rape, and torture of the people on October 7, 2023. That involved the killing of over 1,200 people. And the crime of Israeli government include the techniques used like starvation, serious injury, willful attack on the civilian, which has caused the death of many civilians. So these are the accusations that comes against the Israeli government in case of war against the Palestine. Okay, now before we understand this and how it is going to pan out, we need to know what is International Criminal Court. Now, International Criminal Court is an organization which is responsible for investigation and trying of individuals who are charged with very serious crime that they are actually impacting that they are concerned to the entire international community. And those crimes include genocide, crime against humanity, war crimes, so the crimes of aggression. If an individual is involved in such kind of crime, then those cases can be tried in International Criminal Court. International Criminal Court is actually an international court which was established in 2002 as a part of implementation of Rome Statute, which is an international treaty which came up in 1998. Just remember, Rome Statute, by which the ICC was formed, came into 1998. It provides the framework for establishment of International Criminal Court (ICC). Its power, the guidelines by which it will operate, and its function as well. So we've discussed the function, but you should remember that ICC is the world's first permanent international criminal court. World's first permanent international criminal court. The question can be asked around it. That's why I'm emphasizing it. Okay. With this, remember few facts that you need to memorize. Like number 1, it is located in Hague, Netherlands is its headquarters. It was established in 2002. The treaty came in 1998. It was established in 2002. It has 6 official languages like English, French, Arabic, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, and it has 2 working languages, that is English and French. So these are facts that you need to memorize, and the question can be asked. Now let's come back to membership. Membership and jurisdiction is something that you should not forget because it's complicated and it is from where any question can be asked in prelims. Number 1, membership. It has 124 nations as its member. The recent member being Malaysia, which has recently ratified the Rome Statute. But among its members, India is not the member to ICC. It has neither ratified nor signed the Rome Statute. So always remember that. Along with India, US, Russia and China are also not the party to neither ICC, like not to Rome Statute. Where remember, Russia was part of the ICC but withdrew from it or withdrew its signature in 2016. And after that, when Russia and Ukraine war followed and the crime again happened against each other, so there was a question, can Russia be tried or not? Which we will discuss in just few more steps. Now, next is understanding composition of ICC. It is a criminal court. So, of course, its composition is going to involve judges. So, how many judges does ICC have? It has 18 judges. And each judge has a term of 9 years. And remember, the term is non-renewable. That means once a judge has served the term of 9 years, he cannot again become a judge of the International Criminal Court. When it comes to presidency, it consists of 3 judges who are elected among themselves. That is the 18 members. And they represent the court to the outside world and help the organization of the court. Moving on to what is the relationship of the ICC with the UN? Number 1, just keep in mind, it is not a UN organization. It is not a specialized agency of a UN. It has separate statute and it was formed by a separate entity altogether. But also, this court cooperate with the UN bodies. A situation that you can remember in here. When a situation is not under a court's jurisdiction, UNSC can refer a situation to ICC, granting its jurisdiction. That means maybe a state is not party to ICC, but UNSC can grant it the jurisdiction. So that is a special power ICC has given to the UN. So UN has a collaborating relationship and the special relationship it has with the UNSC, but it is not a UN body. It is not a UN specialized agency. Okay, moving on to the second tricky aspect, that is jurisdiction. You should remember, where does the ICC has jurisdiction? Now, remember, unlike ICJ, that is International Court of Justice, it operates independently. It does not operate in with ICJ. And unlike ICJ takes a dispute in between the state as well. Its main person who deals with this individual. Within the state, if individual are responsible, it will deals with them. And that's why even in this case, the case is filed against the Prime Minister, Defense Minister, and the leaders of Hamas, not the entire state of Israel. Because state are prosecuted or state are held responsible by the ICJ. But here, we specifically deals with individuals. So that is one difference that you will always remember. Next is, ICC can hear cases only in few cases, which means a country where the offence has been committed, if it is a party to the Rome Statute, then ICC has jurisdiction in such cases. That means if they were the victim's country can go to the ICC if the country is a part of the Rome Statute. Second is perpetrator's country, that the one who have committed the offence, if that he is also part of the Rome Statute, then the individual can go and file case in ICC. But again, the third point says that the ICC can only take cases if the national court is not willing or unable to prosecute such cases or go or take it for the trial. That means simply an individual cannot file a case only when the national court is not doing anything and there is enough evidence in that particular regard, they can go to the ICC. Also, the fourth most important article is it does not have any retrospective jurisdiction. That means before it was formed, that is on 1 July 2002, if any war crime was committed, ICC has no jurisdiction in that regard. It will not try such kind of cases. Moving on to relevance of the present case. Once you've understood the ICC, you will understand why it is important. The first concern that arises here is that Israel is not a member of the ICC. So can Israeli citizen be tried under the ICC? The answer is yes. Because even the Israel is not member of the ICC, Palestine is. And like I said, the victim's country from where the assault has taken place, if they are party to the statute, then ICC, it is under the ICC's jurisdiction. So since Palestine is a member of the Rome Statute since April 2015, so ICC has jurisdiction in this matter to prosecute the crime against the national of the Palestine, individual citizens of the Palestine, not the state. Like I said, always keep the clarity in your mind. Next is, the ICC relies on state cooperation for arrest, asset freezing and enforcing. Okay, the two important thing you remember in here is that ICC is dependent on its member for two important things. That is number one, funding. ICC, for the funding, it is dependent on its member. It operates based on the contribution that comes from the member nation. And second, whenever it wants to implement its decision, it doesn't have its own implementing authority. It doesn't have its own implementing operational force. So it is dependent upon the state. So even if, in this case, if ICC find a reasonable ground for the arrest of the Israeli Prime Minister, it will be dependent upon the state. So state will be under obligation, that is 124 state will be under obligation to arrest and extradite the individual to The Hague. Now what will be the implication? This will put several restrictions on the movement of the Israeli Prime Minister, because even if maybe Israeli people or citizen will not arrest them, but if he move to the UK or Germany, which are party to the ICC, there is a great chances they can arrest and maybe give him to The Hague. Now, what are the limitations? The most important thing to oversee over here is that ICC's dependence for the funding as well as for the operation. If the party to the ICC does not adhere to the ruling, that means the decision cannot be implemented, provided the fact that ICC decisions are binding. Despite it cannot be implemented if the parties are not cooperating. That's why it is considered as one of the weakness of the ICC, that in such cases, ICC become a very toothless tiger. Now, the most, like I talked about that ICC, India is not part of the ICC. Now, what is the reason behind that? India gives multiple reasons. Number one is sovereign. India says that when it comes to the individual, if they have committed any kind of crime, then Supreme Court has the highest jurisdiction and it is a matter of sovereignty. In case of trying an individual, we don't go outside. If it is a matter of state or a company is responsible, maybe we can, like UN and UN specialized agency or WTO, we can take care of that even in state matter. But when it comes to individual, the Indian state has the highest sovereignty, and as a matter of national interest, India has not signed the Rome Statute. Next is, India is not happy when it comes to national interest. India is not happy the ambiguity in definition that ICC has taken recourse to. Per se, crime against humanity, there is no objective definition. It is a very broad definition which can easily be misused against India. So India is not happy with that. India wants objectification in such parameters. Third is, India says that UNSC has unchecked right. That means UNSC can refer and delay an investigation and bind it on non-state party. UNSC, like if a country is not party to Rome Statute, UNSC can brought it under the jurisdiction, can simply pass on the case to it. India is not happy with that. And the UNSC's jurisdiction should be limited in such a manner. Lastly, the Indian government believes there is a lot of lacunas in terms of the use of nuclear weapon, and the weapons of mass destruction are not explicitly criminalized. Like, these should have been criminalized, and there has been many incidences as such weapons has been used, but they are not being tried so far. And thus, India is overall skeptical of the ability of the ICC to be impartial in such manner. Now, with this, we are done with ICC. If any, now we will move on to the next article. Now, let's move on to the next article, that is European Union's Copernicus Emergency Services. Now, why are we talking about this? Because it is important from the prelims perspective, especially where the international organization are asked in GS paper 2, and sometimes question can be asked in paper in mains as well. So paper 3 specifically, we deal with international science and tech. So this can be part of that. So paper 2, paper 3, from both perspective, it is important. Here you can see a prelims previous year question based on that. In year 2008, which of the following conducted a complex scientific experiment in which the subatomic particles were accelerated to nearly a speed of light? This was asked in 2009. The options were European Space Agency, European Organization for Nuclear Research, International Atomic Energy Agency, or National Aeronautics and Space Administration. So certainly, a question can be asked from the work that is done by European Space Agency. Now, let's move on to why are we talking about Copernicus program. The Copernicus program came into news because of Copernicus Emergency Management Services, whose data was utilizing in finding the Iranian president Ibrahim Raisi, who died in a plane crash. So this article, this particular service is very useful. Now we need to understand what is Copernicus program and Copernicus Emergency Services. So now let's move on to European Union's Copernicus program, what it is. Now, to understand that, you need to learn that in any country, the space program are dedicated to multiple uses. Like number one is a defense, where the information that is gathered through specialized is used in case of monitoring of the enemy, the topography, utilized in even missiles program, etc. Second is, it can also be used for the telecommunication like radio, TV, you get the signal, and then signal is transmitted to larger masses. And lastly, it is also used for the geospatial mapping. Now, what is geospatial mapping? In this case, the satellite takes an image of the Earth, particular place, and then it creates a map of which place is located where, what is the natural topography, what is the artificial man-made road projects, and then you can know which road is going where. It is with the help of geospatial program that you are able to navigate even the Earth. You are able to know at which place you will reach by what time. So this geospatial satellites, a special program is often dedicated in most of the country. Copernicus is a such program under which the European Space Agency has basically created a Copernicus program as a geospatial program, which is responsible for collecting the geospatial data. Now, earlier, it was known as Global Monitoring for Environmental Security, GMES. It was launched in 1998. So, it is responsible for collecting geospatial information, and that geospatial information is utilized in climate change, marine monitoring, atmosphere monitoring, land monitoring, security, and emergency management. It is an emergency management particular case that Copernicus Emergency Program comes into being. Okay, Now, how does Copernicus program works actually? Now, you need to understand, in order to work, the particular program uses two kind of data. That's what I'm talking about, not satellite program. It is a program which uses data from two places. Number one is from satellite, and number one, it uses data from non-space entities like on ground station. From both satellite as well as ground station, the data from both the places are collaborated and then processed. This data is not enough information. It is processed in order to create the usable information or usable maps. So data is processed and turned into an actionable information, which are later on utilized in land management, marine resource management, marine environment, emergency response, climate change, etc. And it is an emergency response that we are talking about. This is actually implemented with the help of support of the European Commission and European Space Agency, European Environmental Agency. These are responsible for the implementation of this particular program. Data is available. The data is actually full, open and free of charge. If a scientific research is going on this, they can easily avail the data and use it for such services. Now, what is Copernicus EMS or Emergency Services? Under the Copernicus program, it is a specific program which was launched or operational since 2002, which is dedicated to acting or managing disasters. These disasters can be both man-made as well as natural. And when that disaster happens, Copernicus Emergency Services provide two kinds of services. It has two components. Number one is a mapping component, and number two is an early warning component. That means during satellite, those people who want to respond, they want to provide for early response, especially government agencies and individual. They want a map in order to access the information that how much damage has happened, from which route they can access. This mapping component, this mapping is provided by the mapping component of the emergency services and the early warning. It's not just a create map. If they are aware that flood is going to impact this particular region because they are seeing the map of the entire particular area, then they actually also issue alert and assessment for the potential or ongoing threat in a particular area. That do not go over there. There is chances of flood, or the flood is already going over there. And even in mapping, it has two components, that is rapid mapping component and risk and recovery mapping. So in mapping, number one is the rapid one, that in this the information is available within hours, because you have to respond suddenly and you don't have much time to assess. So within a few minutes or few hours that you have to respond. So the available data is given within hours. But other component, that is risk and recovery, the data is given it takes at least 2 to 3 weeks even, because this data is utilized for the planning purpose, that is disaster management planning and recovery. So with this, we are done with Copernicus program. Now let's move on to the next article. Moving on to fourth article, that is why a waterfall appears white. Now this is an important scientific phenomena that we will understand, and thus it is important from GS paper 3 general science perspective. Here we will understand the two concepts of reflection and refraction, not in detail, but at a cursory and a very surface phenomena, you will understand them. Now, why are they important? You can see the previous year UPSC 2021 question. We talk about which of the following is the reason why an astronomical distance are measured in light years. Number one, the distance among the stellar bodies do not change. Number two, the gravity of stellar bodies do not change. The light always travel in a straight line and the speed of light is always the same. So just try to think about it, whether you'll be able to answer this question or not. Certain basic understanding can help you answer this question very easily. Moving on to, that is why are we talking about this? Because there was an article which is described that why does the water in waterfalls appears white? When you see ocean, you see blue color. When you see a water body which is algae at the bottom of it, you see green color. So water takes multiple colors and shape. In case of waterfall, though the body behind it is brown in color or maybe gray in color because it is falling on a stone or even the surface of soil, but yet it appears white. So this is a very strange phenomena. It is like in this article that is being explained. Now, to understand that, we need to understand two concepts, that is reflection as well as refraction. Now, moving on to what is reflection. Reflection happen when a light ray bounces on a particular object and then it's reflected back. It doesn't enter the medium. So this is a surface or a medium on which it bounces, but instead of actually entering, it has actually bounced back. Here, The angle of incidences, that means the angle at which it is bouncing to the surface, is equals to angle of reflection. That means the angle at which it is going back. Now, reflection is a very important concept in here because reflection is responsible for our vision. We only see that the light that which it actually falls on our body. So if this light falls on the surface and come back, if our eyes, whatever light that falls back is actually seen by our eyes. Now, example here is, if you see a green plant, are they absorbing green light? No. When we see a green plant, what happens in such cases, this plant is absorbing all the light component except the green one. So green one is the one that is reflected back to your eyes, and that's why you are seeing the green color. So a particular white light is falling on the leaf, and then leaf has absorbed all the color except the green one, and green one reflect back to your eyes, and that's why you're able to see the green color. So whatever light that reaches our eye, whatever component of light that reaches our eye, we are able to see so. So what happened when we see black color and when we see white color? Does the black color come back, or the white color actually come back to our eyes? In case of black color, all the components of light are being absorbed. So we don't see any color basically. That's why we are seeing a black color. On the other hand, the opposite dimension is white. If all the colors are reflected back and none of the color is absorbed by a piece of a paper or piece of substance, then we see a white color. That means all the colors have come together. So when all the colors come together, when they're mixed up, the 7 components of the light, then they make up the white light. They make up the white color. So remember, light has a 7 color component based on the varying wavelength, and whichever is not absorbed and reflected back to our eyes is responsible for that particular coloration. Now the reflection impact our vision. Then so does refraction as well. Refraction also does that. Now what is refraction? Refraction is nothing is a bending of the light from the when it changes the medium. When the light enters from one medium to another, it bends. That particular bending is called as refraction. So, but if this is air and light has entered water, now as a result of the higher density of the water, the speed of the light will come down and it will bend. The speed of light will come down and it will bend. This particular phenomenon of bending of the light is called as a refraction. Now, why it is important? Because our vision is changed when light reflects. For per se, when a straw is placed in a glass of water, we appears this in a very transparent glass. If you have, you can see the straw has bent. The straw has not bent. Basically, vision has changed because now the incident of light is changing. We are seeing it from a very different incident because of the bending of the light, and thus our vision changes in case of refraction as well. Now, what happened in case of waterfall? Now, in case of waterfall, multiple droplets are there. It's not just one, multiple droplets. So now, in case of water, the light doesn't generally reflect. It generally refract. That means it changes its inclination because it's not an opaque object. And generally, in case of a water, what we see a general refraction. But if there is multiple layers of water and multiple droplets, so what happens when light by the top layer, the light is refracted. So we have water droplets, multiple water droplets. At the top layer, the rays are refracted. The rays are refracted. And ultimately, when it reaches the bottom layer, it is reflected back with all the components. So you see, you are seeing the multiple layers. At the top layer, it is being refracted, it is being refracted. It is being refracted more and more and then more, and ultimately it actually reflects back. So refraction turning into reflection is what is responsible for the white color of the waterfall. Okay, so then you can see the light is refracted, but the top layer of the water drop continues to the reflection at a subsequent layer, and this repeated process result in light being reflected, causing the appearance of whiteness. And that is actually responsible phenomena for the whiteness of mist, vapor, water vapor, paper colloidal solution, clouds, talcum powder, etc. So for a waterfall, but also most important phenomena in here is, just remember, for a waterfall to appear white, light should come from all the directions. So there's multiple reflection and refraction over here. If it is coming from only one direction, then it may not result in a white color, the waterfall. So In order to see, you need to know that it's coming from other direction. Because if the water is coming from one direction, often result in the appearance of rainbow or the appearance of an object like phenomena similar to rainbow. Okay, now I hope you understand this. Now let's move on to the next topic. Now let's move on to last article, that is UN report, where Indian pastoralists need the land rights recognition is highlighted by the UN report. So in this article, we will talk about UN Convention on Combating Desertification, Rangeland and even Forest Right Act. Only a part of it. This is important from the GS2 perspective, that is in environmental conservation and important aspect of governance. They are coming together to make this like important article. Now, the UPSC asked this question like in 2016, you can see, consider the following international agreement: International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture, UN Convention to Combat Desertification, and World Heritage Convention. Which of the following has a bearing on diversity? You had to come up with the answer. Just think about it. If you even like try to come up with multiple permutation, you'll be able to answer this. Moving on to why are we talking about this? Because the UN report, recently UN has come up with a report that is Global Land Outlook. And not just UN, a specific body of the UN, that is the UN Convention on Combating Desertification, has come up with this report, which has highlighted the plight of pastoralists, which does not have land right, which does not have matter access, and the land is suffering from multiple kinds of degradation due to man-made factors like climate change, etc. So the report talks about that. Number one, it talks about before we talk about range length, we need to understand what is UNCCD. Now, UNCCD or UN Convention on Combating Desertification was a result of the multiple conferences that were happening by the state parties, and ultimately 3 sister convention came to deal with the impact of environment as a human activity. So 3 sister convention are, number one is UNFCCC, UNFCCC is dedicated to dealing with the climate change. Number 2 is UNCBD, that is which is responsible for convention for biodiversity. It is dedicated to biodiversity convention as a result of man-made action. And lastly, UNCCD. UNCCD is actually dedicated to combating desertification and mitigating the effects of drought through local cooperation and national program. Just remember, in UNCCD, its focus is on local knowledge, local experience, as well as national program. So both are the part of it. Now, convention takes care of all the 3 kinds of lands, that is arid land, semi-arid, and even dry subhumid areas known as dry land. That's the reason it is dedicated to desertification. This came into being in 1994, and this belonged to one of the few few of the convention which are legally binding, which is like a legally binding international agreement. Okay, moving on to this overall, the convention is responsible for conserving or preventing the desertification, at same point of time promoting the sustainable land management. And for overall, like I said earlier, it depends on 2 things. Number 1, national program, which actually comes in form of National Action Program, NAP, but they do not act alone. Always they are tailor-made according to local needs, and they demands the local participation. Local community should participate in that, and that is what you should remember. This is a bottom-up approach. That means engaging local communities is a very important aspect of this particular treaty. Okay, now UNCCD published various reports, one being the Global Land Outlook, the one which the highlights we're going to read just now. It provides the strategic insights of the land use, and the other one is all the other initiative it has is Land Degradation Neutrality Target, which aims to provide promote the healthy and productive land resource over time, as line with the promoting the overall idea of the sustainable development. Okay, now let's go back to the highlighting the what report talks about. In this report, it says that almost half of the world rangeland are degraded. Half of the world rangeland are degraded, mostly due to man-made factors like climate change, population growth, land use change, and expansion of farmland. So it is not because of natural reason. The human being is the primary reason for the degradation of rangeland, because of which the half of them are actually gone away from the face of the earth. Now, what are rangeland? Rangeland which cover nearly 18 million square kilometer are characterized by the low vegetation like grassland, shrubland, wetland, semi-arid land, mountain pastures, plateaus, tundras, etc. Though they have a lesser vegetation, they play a very critical or a crucial role in combating climate change, as they are, number one, a very good carbon sink. Number two, they prevent the soil erosion. Number three, they prevent land degradation. And number four, desertification. And thus they have a very crucial role to play. So the first highlight of the report is about the rangeland, and so then let's move on to the pastoralist communities in India. So global report we saw, now coming out to pastoralist. Now, who are like pastoralists? This include communities in India like Mandhari, Van or Gujars and Rabaris, which are estimated to nearly 20 million in India, and they face several challenges. The challenges here include, number one, they don't have the land right are not recognized. Overall, their like problem, the other problem is they're already marginalized community, and because of which they're not able to influence the policy decision, now which result in the uncertainty over the access to land and what will happen to land after a certain period of time. Second is, they are being overall overlooked in the entire environmental conservation program, because we focus on the forestry-based intervention, we focus on conserving the natural grassland and plantation, but we don't focus on such kind of grassland that we have right now. So overall, the entire conservation area, they are mostly being neglected, and so are the people who live in such particular climates. Now, status of grassland in India. Only 5% of grassland falls within the protective area. The rest of it, it's not. At least a greater part of forest are protected. But in case of grassland, only 5% is protected, and their number has declined from 18 million in 2005 to 12 million in 2015. The comparison is to 2005. We are not even going back to 1970 or the era of industrialization, the age of industrialization from which is generally considered as the comparative time from which we started seeing how much human beings have started impacting the environment. Now, economic contribution. They contribute significantly to economy through livestock rearing, milk production. They're responsible for huge, good amount of milk production. They contribute to 4% of the national GDP, 26% of agricultural GDP, and overall in India, they also account for 20%. India account for the 20% of world livestock population, which graze upon these groundland. So they have high economic contribution. If we oversee the degradation of such land, this is going to have a huge economic impact and livelihood of many people. Now, okay, the Forest Right Act is also dedicated to for the protection of the forest dwelling in tribal communities. A part of it is also in which the grassland the tribe who lives in the grassland can also be protected under this. But this we will not discuss in detail. This is a part of your entire mains programmation. Now, since we are done with these articles, let's move on to prelims and mains questions. Let's move on to the last part, that is discussing the prelims and mains question. The first question over here is, why does the white paint appear white even though it does not contain any white pigment? The four reasons are given over there. You have to identify the correct one. Number one, the white paint contains a tiny air bubble that reflects the light uniformly, creating a white appearance. See, the reflection, certainly like it alone here is not reason behind the appearance of white paint as a white. So this can be moved out. Like especially air bubble here we're talking about, it's not even opaque, like everything is like being reflected back. Second is, the white paint has transparent oxides of zinc, lead and titanium suspended in a transparent solution, causing the multiple reflection and refraction of light which scatter in all directions. If you remember, that is also the phenomena behind the whiteness of water in the waterfall. They're transparent, but the multiple reflection and refraction are responsible for the white color. That means it's similar to the whiteness of water in a waterfall. So this can be considered as a reason. Second, let's also eliminate them if that is the case. White paint is mixed with the colorless dye that enhances the brightness and whiteness. The colorless dye is the phenomenon is not here, so it's not even explained, so we can eliminate this. The chemical composition of white paint inherently reflects all color of light, making it appear white. So that is also, it should not be the reason. The D is actually the reason because of which the paint appears white. Next is, with the reference to appearance of whiteness in waterfall, consider the following statement. Water appears white in a waterfall because of the multiple reflections without a reflection of light within the water droplets. Just now I said multiple reflection and multiple reflection is responsible. So without reflection is not possible. That means the statement 1 is wrong. Second, the appearance of whiteness in a waterfall requires light to come out from a particular direction. I said in the explanation itself, the water should come from one direction. From all the direction. If it is coming from one direction, it will result in a formation of a rainbow-like scenario. So, of course, the statement 2 is also wrong. The answer in this case is D. Now, moving on to the Copernicus program that we discussed. The question is, who is associated with it? It talks about the NASA, that is National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Number 2, European Space Agency. Number 3, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. Number 4, Russian Federation Space Agency. You know, it was a program of European Union and specific European Space Agency, and thus the B is the correct answer. Next is, with reference to International Criminal Court, consider the following statement. Here, ICC is governed by the international treaty called Rome Statute. It is the world's first permanent international criminal court. Now, you know that. This is the same statement that I taught you over there. It was found because of the Rome Statute, which was signed in 1998. It came into being 2002. So, the statement 1 is true. And so is the statement that it is the world's first permanent international criminal court. Second statement says that it is a specialized agency of the UN which investigates and tries individuals charged with more serious crimes of concern to the international community, genocide, crime against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression. Now, this part of the question is right. This is the function of the ICC. However, this part is not right. The statement is wrong. Reason being, it is not a special agency of the UN. It is not a UN organization. I specifically highlighted that, and I said that again and again, and that's why the statement is wrong. And the answer over here is going to be only one, that is A. Moving on to consider the following statement regarding the UNCCD. So, UN Convention on Combating Desertification. It says, first statement says it was established in 1994 as a sole legally binding international agreement linking environment and development to sustainable land management. It is a very general argument. Generally, they are two. So, and this is actually true. We have read that as well. The convention focused specifically on human tropical region, which are most vulnerable to desertification. Actually, this doesn't deal with tropical region, arid, semi-arid. That is what we discussed. So, of course, the statement has to be wrong. So, 2 is eliminated. Wherever it is there, we can easily come up with 1, 3, 4, even if we didn't read the entire question. But let's move on and read. The land degradation neutrality target is one of the key initiatives to promote UNCCD. That is true. We read about that. And global land outlook is a significant report published by UNCCD. So even by means of elimination, if you know about few statements, you'll be able to come up with an answer. Okay. Now let's move on to the main question. Questions state that in order to attain the Sustainable Development Goal, India cannot afford to move its focus away from the maternal and newborn care. Discuss that in light of the rise of the hypertensive disorder in pregnancies. Okay. Now, when we're talking about this, the first thing that is mentioned is sustainable development, and the second is maternal and newborn care. So the sustainable development is just going to be an introduction part. What is SDG? You will define SDG. In particular, you will come up with the SDG that is dedicated to health, and in particular maternal health. That is SDG 3 and 3.1 and 3.2 to be specific are dedicated to maternal health. So we'll mention them, and then in a connecting para, you will talk about the status of maternal and newborn health in India, where you will talk about the MMR is currently nearly 100 per lakh, 100 women die, or 97 women died per lakh pregnancies, and then the prenatal neonatal mortality rate. So you will talk about that. That status is still it is high in India, and then in the body part 1, you will talk about what are the reason behind such high maternal mortality rate. So you will give the reason, but you will specifically focus upon the hypertensive disorder, and you will give the data that is two-thirds of the maternal health related complications are because somewhere related to this. Because the question already says that it focus on in light of the hyper-intensive disorders in pregnancy. So you need to focus on that. That's why while giving the reason, you will focus on this in particular. And then is coming up to the aspect where we say we cannot move away. Then you will highlight why we can't move away, not only to attain the SDG, but also because the maternal and neonatal mortality is a key indicator of development status of a country. And it's also the direct causes are generally known to the people, and they are preventable as well. And that's the reason a country, in order to be developed, should focus on those aspects and eliminate them, or bring it to the bare minimum state. Okay, so you will explain the entire section, and in a conclusion, you will give suggestion And thus, you can say that India's focus on maternal and newborn care is essential for achieving the SDG target and improving overall health outcome. With this, we are done with today's question. If you have any doubt, you can put a comment in the comment section.